Welcome back to the Arc Path.
My name is Bernard,
And I'm Casey.
and we are celebrating another amazing day to do podcasts.
What makes today any more amazing than every other day?
Just the realization that I get to do something different than what my father did.
Hmm.
And my father always said, "Man, you talk a lot." And finally, I got to do something with that. So it was thought. I always thought it was a problem, and then I realized, you know what? I like talking.
You do. And your father worked a lot.
My father worked a lot.
And he didn't talk a lot.
He did not talk a lot.
Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. And so, that realization that I get to do what I love and I'm good at it.
Well, now we get to evaluate what does good at it mean. You're good at talking?
I'm good at talking, and where people listen and they tell me I'm good at talking.
There you go.
Yes.
We're dabbling into communication as a topic today on our podcast, and recognizing that communication isn't just talking. It's listening, it's understanding, it's building bridges of connection with other people, and it's understanding ourselves as well as others, right?
Yes, and the other side of that is burning bridges with other people.
Lobbing grenades, taking somebody else, saying something that you go, oh, I can't take that back.
That's right. That's right.
Lots of forms of communication, and really what we're diving into today is a recognition that none of us started with a blank slate.
That's so true.
Whatever you were brought into this world from your parents, from your situation, whether it was as an immigrant or as I don't even know the contrast to the word I want to bring, but it's whatever it is, wherever you started, you didn't start with a blank slate.
That's so true. That's so true. And we don't even have awareness of what we started with. I think, if you emigrate to a place, kind of, hey, I started here, I ended up here. But if you're born into the place, this is the place that I was born. There is no contrast from where I was born, until you start traveling, and then you start seeing cultural contrasts. I think people are not educated enough about the situation that they were born in.
And I'm going to say people might, as you say, I'll go back to you first. People aren't educated enough about the situation they're born in.
Yes.
And I'm just going to contrast that with people may be too educated without an awareness of the impact of what they brought with them. So
correct, because they just got it.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's just like this scarf. I said, I'm going to take this scarf off of me before I do the podcast. And, I ended up wearing it and just because it was just a part of me. I was wearing it all morning and it's on me. And there was no awareness that there was something on me that was maybe not supposed to be on there.
And so now if I engage that and go, I give you permission to take it off, it's an intrusion.
You're not the boss of me.
Yeah, I know. What a concept, but it's an invitation. A lot of what we encounter in the Arc Path is this kingdom experience, and we want to remind you that a lot of kingdom is unlearning. We spent so much time putting on scarves, putting on jackets, putting on new clothes, if the metaphor that keeps running itself. And really what we need to do is learn how to take off something that we go, oh, I don't even know why that is a part of my story. There's a famous story about grandma's baked ham that for generations and generations and generations, they always talked about grandma always cut the end of the ham off. And so every Easter when they had this ham, they would always remember the great grandma that first cut the ham butt off the end. And there was so many stories as to why that made the ham better. And then eventually at one point somebody said, we really ought to trace this back and figure out what it is, because if the ham is that much better, we ought to be able to make money out of it. That was the goal of this one. We're going to make money out of this. Why does grandma cut off the end of the ham? Long story short, they realized that grandma cut off the end of the ham because her oven was smaller than the modern day oven. And the ham didn't fit in the oven unless you cut off the end of the ham. And then but we can take that story and go all sorts of directions about why grandma always cut the ham butt off because it was better. Nope, just didn't fit. Anyway. What we inherit as we go through the story of life, we inherit years, and I'm going to say it, we inherit years of baggage.
Mm.
Years of story, of inheritance, of generational um, systems being passed on. And sometimes, and might I add, most of the time, we need to stop and acknowledge that.
Wow. Well, that's and that's really that's the arc path. But I loved how I think you captured something unique today
Hmm.
in the arc path as he was talking about um, so we all know that we have to, we talk about life of better choices. We have to learn to make new choices. But the acknowledgement is the acknowledgement of things that you have to unlearn.
Yes.
And that's a very powerful dynamic going, because where do you go to a lot of people? Do you tell them, hey, you need to unlearn a lot of things? Nobody
Hmm.
says that. It's like, hey, everybody, you have to go and you have to learn something new, which is great. But a lot of the times to learn something new, you have to unlearn
Yes.
some old things as well. So I think that's a very important part of the arc path, and I think we don't spend enough time touching that.
Yeah.
And I like that insight.
And the invite is to not try to touch it with curiosity, touch it with a openness to not solve it. If we just go after everything to solve, then we're only getting focused on what is the problem. And just to pull more out of the ham story, there was no problem with cutting off the butt of the ham, and yet if you didn't stop and have a little bit of curiosity about it, you'd make up more stories about it, which leads to assumptions rather than
Yeah.
acknowledgments. So we really need to invite curiosity about communication, and that
Yes.
that becomes the invitation for us to really understand somebody else by saying, "Hey, this is what I heard. Could you did I hear it right?
Yeah.
Can you help me understand? This is what I took." And you get a whole lot of understandings of a higher level of communication when you stay curious.
I like that, and it is awareness. I agree. It's going back and solving all the things that we inherited, fortunes and misfortunes,
Mm.
and that's a whole lot to. It's overwhelming to touch.
So, but we're going to touch it anyway. Before we go to future inheritance, let's go back because we kind of touched this already as we look backwards. Um, a lot of people don't recognize the inheritance of stuff that comes through the family line.
Yes.
Word phrases, you inherit that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
generationally. The way you approach money is generationally passed on to you. In current terms, we'd say, do you have a scarcity mindset or do you have an abundant mindset? If you want to know what you started with, look at your parents or look at their parents, and then kind of look at how that passed on
Yeah.
through. And it's not right and wrong. It's not wrong to have a scarcity mindset. It might come out of a context that your family came through war or loss. Bernard, you can tell the story of your family line and the hardships and trials and how that impacted your family coming out the other side when they hit, America in that
Yes.
sense. And it's different in your story than somebody else's story.
Correct.
Um, that's an inherited mindset that gets passed on.
I love that, and it's just awareness of. I think a lot of that we don't really have awareness on what we have, but you have to kind of go back and look at and recognize that a lot of it was passed on.
Hmm.
And that's hard because a lot of there's a lot of arrogance, there's a lot of pride in how we think we built ourselves, and in a sense we did,
Hmm.
but it's hard to especially when you look at your parents, you go, I'm not like you, and I don't want to be like you. And so and some I seldomly run into an individual that says, oh, I'm uh, uh, I'm like my mom or dad, and I want to be like my mom and dad.
Yeah.
You could pull some resemblances, but a lot of us go, you know what? I'm not. I'm so different than a parent.
I want to highlight. I think as you said that if I want to be like my parents, I find that most people have their parents on. I'm going to just say it, the idealized. I would love to be. My parents were perfect. My parents did everything right. I'm striving to be more like my parents.
The delusional,
The fantasy of
yeah,
if I could only be like my parents, or it seems to be a little bit of the pendulum swing. I want to be nothing like my parents.
yeah.
And both of those, whether in the realm of fantasy or catastrophe, neither is serving the person.
Yes.
It's either a idealized "I'll never be as good as them," or it's a demonized "I wouldn't be as bad as them,"
Yes.
but you're not really acknowledging who you are.
Well, and what I was trying to pull into, and I love that you brought that clarification, because what we're made up of both of those. I mean, we have a lot of, as Casey was talking about, our habits, our word choices, and a lot of our life
Mm-hmm.
choices come from our parents, siblings, aunts, uncles. That the people that surrounded us in those
Yeah.
early years, and we are the sum of our experiences, our encounters. And so we just need to acknowledge that those people not only impacted us, but they're a part of us in a sense. And
Hmm.
and I think that's the hardest thing, is to, because if you don't acknowledge that, then the stuff that you deal with is harder, because you're a mess, because you're a tragic mess, and
Mm.
so there is no acknowledgement. I can't, this is the best version of me, and this is how I chose to do me, and you can't tell me that I need to acknowledge anything, because I chose this.
Yeah. So as we touch that healing, you've driven home the acknowledgement.
Oh.
Along the arc path, we want to invite you to recognize that there's healing, and what I'm hearing Bernard say in the realm of healing is, if you hate everything about where you came from, you're going to have a really hard time loving where you're going.
Yeah.
Because everything is going to be a rejection of your past, which is going to put you in a below the line mindset about what tomorrow is going to look like. So I just want to invite you here to recognize that there's healing.
Yeah.
We can embrace even the things that we don't like, even the things that we wish we wouldn't have inherited or started with. You just embrace them and go, it is. This is where I've come from. This is who I am. There's things in my family lineage that are not the glorious ones. Oh, I have that great, great, great uncle so-and-so that did something. And it's not like we have to ignore it or deny it, but we go, how is that? How can that liability be turned into an asset?
Yeah.
How can that weakness be turned into a strength? How can I learn from the mistakes that have been made in previous generations in order to put them into a positive spin for my life today?
Mm. Yeah, I think the healing element, we've seen it repeatedly in our lives. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
it in many others, and there is no healing without acknowledgement.
Mm.
The I'm trying to find the opposite of acknowledgement, and ignoring it,
I,
distancing
I think
yourself.
it's assumption in my world.
Is it assumption? Okay.
You just make lots of assumptions instead of acknowledging.
Well, but I it just in my family, we just sweep things under the rug, and we
Mm.
have rugs that are so high. You go, why is this rug so high? Because we've swept so much stuff under. We don't even know what's there,
Mm.
and so it's that. It's funny. We ignore it, but ignorance, and I can't seem to separate those words in my brain to say them. We ignore them out of ignorance, and the reality is that unless we bring this acknowledgement element into it, there is no healing. But if we do bring the acknowledgement,
Mm-hmm.
and then I want to bring it into what Casey was saying, is, man, healing is possible. Just
Amen.
open that, just to grab anything from that rug and just throw it out.
And look at it and recognize that it's there.
Yeah.
I want to bring back a word that we've been dancing. It's inheritance.
Mm.
And a lot of people think about inheritance happening at death, at the end. And what we're really unfolding is that inheritance happened at the beginning.
Yes.
And where you lack acknowledgement that I have received an entire playbook about what life is going to look like, and if I ignore that, as you're talking about ignoring what's under the rug, if I ignore that inheritance, I'm going forward blind
Mm.
when I don't have to. I can be aware of my tendencies. I can be aware of all these things, but I have to acknowledge and embrace my inheritance has already been complete.
Mm. Gosh, how rich was that? I'm gonna try to give it back to you. I just, my brain is racing in so many ways. It just, I want to bring it into cash, because that's,
Mm.
we can understand cash. You on your birthday, the day of your birth, you received I mean, I was going to say $1 million, but by today's standards, you look at it, go $1 million is
Burned, gone.
you receive $10 million, and you have it. You have it, and this concept of on your birthday, you received a full inheritance,
Mm.
a bunch of stuff, a whole lot of stuff, good, bad, and the ugly. You got it all, and it's what a paradigm shift is for you as you grow and you have an awareness of this conversation. You go, what did I receive? Where is it? Let me look at it, and
You got a whole lot of people asking, "Where's my $10 million? I ain't seen nothing like that."
well, and but you did, and the idea is, if you bring that self-reflection into the
Mm.
present of what did I receive, and you go interview your parents, your siblings, your grandparents, if you're blessed and they're still alive, go talk to them. Go see what you got. What's your inheritance? Your emotional, mental,
Hmm.
physical. Who I was talking to, about eating right and being, and go, my grandparents lived to be 100. I'm like, not the way you eat."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, I got my inheritance, whatever these amazing genes. But did you go talk to your grandparents? What was their diet? What was their lifestyle? It wasn't how you're living. And so there's a whole lot of acknowledgement to walk into that healing.
What you're inviting us to do is recognize that we don't have to wait until somebody dies to receive their inheritance
Correct.
or to receive our inheritance from them. In fact, what a foolish way to live. It's as if it's not available today.
Correct.
But what we can do is go get curious and communicate.
Yes.
Learn from them,
Yes.
listen to them, ask
Yes.
stories about them. How did
Yeah.
this happen? Tell me a story about your parents. Tell me a story about this time, this place. And as we do that, we gain, in the arc path, we gain this restoration of building, of growing, of understanding ourselves even deeper.
Yes.
What a flip on inheritance today in
Mm.
communication.
Surprise, surprise. I'm going to add something else to our viewers. If any of you are Christian, and if you're curious about your spiritual inheritance,
Mm.
call me, message me. If you want one thing to change your life so dramatically, in the Christian Bible, we've received all of these spiritual gifts.
Mm.
What are they? Where are they? Why don't you know them? Why aren't you living into them? And because nobody told you. You have them. It's an abundance of gifts that you got at your birth. So again, if you want to know, message us. Message us, because imagine that's an additional inheritance. That's extra in addition to what you received from your parents and grandparents. There's more.
Yeah, I love that you went there, and inheritance is a big word as we point to kingdom in a spiritual realm, because you are a co-heir of a kingdom,
Yes.
and that is your invitation from that lens to say, it's already begun. You don't have to wait, and that's really what we're touching on today,
Yeah.
is
Don't
recognizing
wait.
don't wait for your parents, your grandparents, for anybody else to die in order to know what you get to inherit.
Yes.
You missed it. And the only way to move through that process is to embrace the power of communication that invites you to get really curious and ask good questions,
Yeah.
to listen with open ears, and to gain an understanding that I inherited life abundant at the beginning. And this is an insight to the arc path. Abundance doesn't begin at the end. Abundance begins at the beginning.
Mm.
So when we acknowledge that we already have abundance at the beginning,
Yeah.
that's when we step into the fullness of it as we move into the kingdom realm.
That in itself is a paradigm shift. I think most from there's something preached to humanity that the end is going to be glorious.
Mm.
I think it's one of my least favorite TV concepts, where the majority, the villain is victorious time and time again, and then the hero comes in at the end. I don't want to live that lifestyle.
Yeah.
I do not want that to be my life. I don't want that to be my children's lives. I mean, what a horrible thing to preach, and TV has propagated that,
Mm-hmm.
where it's so ingrained in our psychology to accept a crappy life.
Mm.
And so if you've been on the arc path, that's the foundation of the arc path. You can change your life today, not tomorrow. You can't change it tomorrow. You cannot change it tomorrow. It has to be today.
Yeah. And Bernard, you highlight there for our listener that is wrestling with this concept, going, okay, I'll go back and think about what I inherited at birth, but then you pulled it and flipped the whole equation to recognize that you get to leave an inheritance,
Mm,
and that invitation is for us to live a legacy. A legacy is what lives on beyond you. So I just invite you today to go, what are the questions that your kids or your grandkids are going to ask about you? And maybe you go, I'm not going to have kids and I don't want to have grandkids. Well, write a book, change the world, do something
mm,
spectacular. It's not about lineage in the sense of your family line. It's about recognizing in the kingdom, there is a family impact and a zone, and I can go out and change 10,000 lives, and they can all receive my inheritance. So what kind
love
of
that.
legacy, what kind of inheritance are you going to leave behind?
Gosh, I love that. I mean, I write a book about your fortune and misfortune. If you want to educate anybody, I mean, that's you know, it, the, imagine if I had my grandfather's book.
Mm,
I have some of his stories, and I'm fortunate, we have a big family, and we were able to hear a lot of those stories. But imagine, and I'm not talking about a daily account, but it's I mean, which wouldn't be bad, but it's just the account of your life. And you look at the life choices and the people, the community around them. What a powerful thing
mm.
to pass on to a future generation.
Amen.
Yes.
Well, today we wanted to engage with you a little bit of a concept of communication. We wanted to awaken within you an awareness
Yeah.
that you can acknowledge
Yeah.
that you inherited everything you needed on the day you were born. That was an abundant mindset.
Yes.
Even if you didn't start with it, it
Yes.
was available and you could begin to work towards it. If that hasn't come to pass and been a reality in your life, guess what? Bernard just said it. Today you can change it.
Yes.
So that begins down the arc path to acknowledge where you're at, to heal what's not working for you, to lean into the restoration and growth process in order for you to truly enjoy your kingdom inheritance today.
I love that. Well, again, we look forward to seeing you on the Arc Path. We look forward to seeing you in the workshops. Show up. The idea is again, take matters into your own hands, because it's in your hands. It's
Mm-hmm.
in nobody else's. I promise you, it's in your own hands. So show up. Make the time. This is about you, your life, your legacy. So start today. Show up at the workshops. Come and contribute to the Insight Line. Contribute on the Arc Path group on Facebook. We want to know your story. We want to hear about your legacy today. So thank you for listening, guys, and watching us. And we look forward to seeing you sometime soon.
Have a good one.